Welcome back, guys. We had been talking about the godly family. We have went through the godly man and the principles that we should look to from the scripture that tells us about, being a godly man, godly husband. And then we went through practical applications for that. And now we're on the part of the study where we're looking at the godly wife. And once we've completed that, we'll start looking at the godly parents, and then we'll get to the godly children. Now, last time we had started with the godly wife, and we had talked about the different principles that the Bible kind of lays out for us. And like we talked about before, a lot of these principles are going to overlap with principles for the godly husband because that's all about the godly marriage. And because specifically of principle number one, that's why we see a lot of overlap. And that principle number one was, of course, the one flesh mentality. The day that you get married, the day that you say I do in our modern days, now you are no longer two people, but you are one flesh. You have a shared life. You're not competing. And we mentioned that, and we'll get back to the practical applications of that. Then the second principle for the godly wife, which is where it's a little bit different than for the godly husband, this is respectful submission. And respectful submission that's patterned after the church and its relationship to Jesus, not after what culture tells you about submission and what current thinking is regarding submission. It's very different. Principle three was quiet strength. And that means that the wife has a very powerful influence over her husband, but it's not through manipulation. It's not through some kind of puppet master pulling the strings. Rather, she's a powerful influence because she has that spirit that wants to speak. And it's going to be speaking godly things to her husband. Then we got to principle four, and that's where we talk about purposeful help. The wife is an active partner in the husband's calling. It's not that the husband is the only one with a calling. It's that the husband and the wife unit have a calling. And if God has called you to ministry together as a unit, it's in the wife's position because she is this one flesh mentality that his calling is your calling. His ministry is your ministry. And of course, in some cases, vice versa. But you are to work together to glorify God. And then that brought us to principle five. And principle five is, again, similar to the husband, covenant loyalty. You don't ever have to worry that your husband should be cheating on you. That's one of the things we talked about to the godly man. But also for the man should never have to worry about his wife being either emotionally or physically or any otherwise unfaithful to him. He should always be able to trust in her no matter where she is or who she's with. Now, along with that, which again, we'll get to the practical applications later, that means avoiding putting yourself in situations that even have the appearance of evil. But we'll talk more about that later. So that's where we left off last time. And we still have a couple more principles to go through, which we'll cover today. And then we'll get to the practical applications in the next study. So, principle six, this is household stewardship. Because the woman of the house is either going to be building up the house or tearing it down. And we're not just talking to wives, but that's the main focus here. But everyone in a home, every decision they make, every action they make has a consequence. It's either going to be building up the home or it's going to be tearing it down. Proverbs 14, verse 1 says, every wise woman builds her house or buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands.
What was that reference?
That's Proverbs 14:1. So if you want to know who it is that's tearing your house, don't look to the outside. We will often blame all the social media and all the things we have coming in, but who's allowing that social media into your house? Who's allowing those YouTube videos, those influencers who make jokes of using God's name in vain, who make jokes about using pictures of Jesus and making them funny? Who are we allowing these things? And of course, not to mention the corrupt language, the bad behavior. Who brings it in? Who allows it into their home? A wise woman, and again, these principles can be applied everywhere, but for specifically the woman, she builds up her house, but a foolish woman plucks it down. That is who is tearing down the house, the father and the mother, and then specifically here, especially in this culture, the women had more influence within the home. So a godly wife takes responsibility under her husband's leadership, who is presumably a godly man, for the inner climate of the house. The house is either a place of order and peace, a place where everyone comes for refuge, where everyone knows they can come and rest, or it's a place of chaos. It's a place that she is slowly tearing down. And we'll get to those practical applications later. So Proverbs 31, again, our famous passage, it shows us what building a house looks like in practice. This woman is diligent. She gets up while it is yet night. She gives meat to her household. She is the first to rise, and she makes sure all the needs are met. She manages logistics. She knows that her family needs clothes. She knows that the clothes need to be clean. She knows they need fed. She's got the meals prepped. She's done the shopping. She has prepared the meals. Not every meal is, Grubhub or Uber Eats. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but the point is that obviously is a financial strain. This is a woman who always knows where her family's next meal is set up. She also governs her tongue. She says in Proverbs 31 that she opens her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She is always erring towards mercy and kindness. That doesn't mean she lets people walk all over her. It's not like that she means that she lets people abuse her family, but she always is speaking well. She speaks well. She never has rude statements. She's never talking harshly to her children, to her husband, to her siblings, to her parents. She's always kind. Then her children and her husband, how do they respond to this? They praise her. It says her husband shall call her blessed. So her husband praise her children praise her because of her good works. Now that today, these days, we often say, wait a minute, our kids aren't ever praising us. Our kids are always rude. Well, was that always the case? Or was there a period of time as they grew up where they used to praise and love and honor you? And then all of a sudden they begin to have rude comments, snarky comebacks, rude things. Where does that come from? And what have you allowed into your house? And sadly, media today, whether it be social media or movies, how do they portray the family? How do they portray the father, especially, usually as some dumb guy that doesn't know anything, and the mother as some overbearing nitpicker that is somehow holding back the child? What are we allowing into our house? So the point is, every woman that's godly should replicate every task that we do modernly, but we need to do it from a wise point of view. We have to have intentional stewardship in the home. We try to teach our kids that every action has consequences, but that's true for us too. That's true in how we talk, how we respond, how we roll our eyes or don't roll our eyes, how we get our rooms done, how we clean things, how we don't leave work till the next day. We are building in our children what they are going to be tomorrow when they see us, not just in what we do. So do you have intentional stewardship? Now, the worry, of course, is, well, wait a minute, that's how you build up the house, right? Trying to live the right way and do the right things and say and act the right way. But how do foolish women pluck down their own house? How does a foolish woman tear it down? Well, you probably don't have to look very far before you come across the example of a foolish woman. This is someone who generally will be chronically complaining. Oh, there's nothing to do. Oh, I'm bored. Oh, I wish we had this. Oh, why can't I get more? Why can't I have more? Chronic complaining and negativity, it makes a home emotionally unsafe. For those that are coming in the home, for the husband coming home, when there's reckless spending, when there's always something more we need, that begins to be a lot more uncomfortable for the husband to come home to. A lot more frustrating whenever he's trying to provide for the finances. And of course, in today's age, both the man and the woman provide for finances. But can you make do with what you have? Are you taking care of what you have so that you don't need to replace it so frequently? Do you ever undermine your husband's discipline of the children? Making your husband the enemy and you the ally. That will pluck down your house faster than you realize. Oh, you know how your dad is. Not a phrase that should come out of a Christian woman's mouth, a godly woman. And then indulging moodiness and volatility. particularly with our kids. Oh, they're just having a bad day. Everyone has to walk on eggshells. That is not the place of a godly woman. We don't indulge bad behavior because we're stressed. No, we bring our bodies into subjection, and we teach that to our children as well. And sometimes that means, hey, kids, go take 5 minutes and cool off. Think about how you're acting, and then come back out. Let's do this again. We don't allow volatility in our homes. That's what we need to do, particularly as parents. But we're talking now directly to the godly women who sometimes will, try to say, oh, just don't say anything to them right now. They had a rough day. No, let's bring it. Let's talk about it. We are a family. We grow together. We love together, and we get through problems together. So the point is, you don't need a catastrophic sin to destroy a home. You just need patterns, unrepentant patterns of bad behavior. Scripture says the wise woman is a builder, and the foolish woman, she's the demolition crew. Not because she's the one who ruins it, but she's allowing it to get ruined. Again, with her own hands. So again, principles to everyone, but this is specifically to the women. Any more thoughts on principle 6, this idea of household stewardship? All right. So that brings us to principle 7. And this one is physical faithfulness. Okay. Physical faithfulness. This is mutual ownership of the relationship, willing intimacy. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, it doesn't just say, hey, here's the rules for husbands and here's the rules for wives. It gives the same rule to both. Let the husband render to his wife due benevolence, so kindness towards her, and likewise also the wife to the husband. Well, for me to be kind, sometimes that means doing what I don't want to do. And that's something that I need to be ready and willing to do for my wife, and she needs to be ready and willing to do for me. It doesn't always mean it's something you don't want to do, but it can be. So the wife has not power over her own body, but the husband. And likewise, also the husband has not power over his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one another. This comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. So a godly wife understands and acknowledges and behaves in a way that shows that her body is not her own private possession, but belongs to her husband. And of course, the same applied to the husband. And she engages in faithful, willing intimacy as part of the covenant she made with her husband. She is to be there for his needs as he was to be there for her needs. So that means private intimacy. It's never a bargaining chip. It's never a reward. It's never a punishment. It's never scheduled. Defraud ye not is a command, not a suggestion. Defraud not your spouse. Now, that also means you don't weaponize headaches or fatigue or busyness, right, as an escape from any other responsibilities. Again, and she cares for her body, not like in vanity. She's not always having to get, the fanciest new makeup, but she is a good steward of her body. Her body, again, is not hers. Her physical attractiveness, just as the man's physical attractiveness, is a gift to one another. So not an obsession, but a stewardship of something offered to the other person in love. If you go to the gym, it's not just for you to be happy with yourself. It's to please your spouse. Again, this principle can be applied both ways. But at the same time, this is not a license for coercion or to demand from the husband, or if the husband wants something, she must do it right now. That's not what we're saying here. This is all bound equally. Just like her body is not hers alone, but his. His body is not his alone, but hers. So there is a mutual giving, not a unilateral taking. Hey, this is what I want. Here's what it says. So you have to do it now. That's not what we're talking about. It's the fact that you love one another and you behave and love one another, that there is willing giving from both ends when it is required, when it is asked. So if the spiritual and the relational foundation of your relationship is rotten, there's no amount of lingerie that's going to fix that. There's no amount of activity that's going to fix that. But if Jesus Christ is the central source, the central connection for both the godly man and the godly woman. And both spouses, because of their gifts from Christ, because of their gift of salvation, because of their desire to be godly, are pursuing their roles. Guess what? Physical intimacy becomes the natural fruit of mutual love, trust, and respect. Any other thoughts on this physical stewardship before we kind of tie all this together?
What was it titled again? I didn't get that written down.
So this one is physical faithfulness was the seventh principle. And just the idea is this mutual ownership of our bodies. It's a man and the woman. They both own both bodies. It's not one person in charge, the other person has to follow. It's willing intimacy and mutual ownership. Got that? Okay. So now let's put it all together and see this is not something sentimental. This is not a Hallmark Channel show, but this is the clear roles of a godly woman. And then, like I say, next time we'll get to the practical applications. So, one flesh mentality. You're not separate. You're not competing individuals. You have one shared life with your husband. And we saw that in Genesis chapter 2, where it says the man shall leave his woman and become one flesh with his wife. And we see that in Genesis chapter 5, where God speaks to them as a single unit. Number 2, respectful submission. The wife, she aligns herself under her husband's headship as an act of obedience, not to her husband, but as an act of obedience to Christ. And she honors him with a posture of genuine respect. So we see that she is respecting her husband, not simply trying to fulfill and trying to check box, like, okay, I didn't argue with him today. True respect. That comes from Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 to 24 and verse 33. Then there is quiet strength. This is the influence of the woman, the real influence that comes through her holiness, her steadiness, and her meek and quiet spirit, not through manipulation and not through nagging. You don't complain him into doing what you want. No, quiet strength. That's from 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1 through 6. Then there is purposeful help. The godly woman is going to actively strengthen her husband and her household because he's going to need strengthened. And she's going to bring her wisdom, her skills, her energy as a true partner to uphold the house, to take care of things. That's in Genesis 2:18 and Proverbs 31, verse 10 to 31. That woman whose price is far above rubies. Then we get to covenant loyalty. This is an emotionally and physically faithful woman. And her allegiance is now and forever attached to the husband under God. Whenever we think of the traditional wedding, what do? We do it in a church. We do it with God as our witness. We do it with all these people as our witness, that I am going to be with you forever. I do. Are you being loyal to that covenant? And we see that in Titus chapter 2, verse 4 and 5, and again, Genesis 2:24. And then we get to household stewardship. And household stewardship, this is where the wise woman builds up her house through what she says, how she works diligently, and how emotionally stable she is, instead of tearing it down with her own hands. And again, that's in Proverbs 31 as well as Proverbs 14, verse 1. And then lastly, physical faithfulness. So this shows a woman who takes care of her body, who stays physically fit, and offers her body in a mutual, willing intimacy, and cares for her health as part of loving her husband. And that was in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. Now, this is not a small life. This is not a dismissive life towards women. This is not a secondary calling. This is a cross-shaped life. This requires the Spirit of God. This requires the Word of God. This requires a focus on Christ. Today's culture has taken the idea of submission and corrupted it into something that we all run and hide from. No, this is a willing, godly submission, which will add to the value of our lives and will give us much fuller lives and much more happiness in our spouses. And again, we'll go through those practical applications later. Any final thoughts on this overview of the godly wife? All right. Well, we'll stop here.